This is Josh Beiser from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can pitch future Critical Thought topics. Alright everybody, before we get started with today's Critical Thought, a little bit of some information. As you've noticed, there has been some reports of some desyncing issues between my voice and the video here. So I checked my webcam drivers, and apparently I haven't updated things since 2012. That's always great to hear, right? But I just ran through the whole update, everything is fully done, so hopefully things will be improved. Unfortunately, I can't see it from here while I'm looking at myself in OBS, but let me know going forward if there's anything weird going on or any issues like that, and if it's still going on, I'll have to go back to the drawing board with it. The other bit of news is I announced today that this will be the last day for the general play of Nioh on the channel. I figure at this point everyone has, made videos on it, and I'm sure you guys are getting tired of it, with everyone talking about it. So, with today's video, it's going to end the regular coverage. If you want the big reveal, I did beat the game. If you missed the New Game Plus plays of the channel, they are currently available. I just put them under the Let's Break Nioh playlist and the Game Spotlight, if you want to find it like that. And if you want to see something specific from Nioh, like let's say you want me to run through a specific mission or fight a specific boss on New Game Plus, let me know in any of the comments and I'll be more than happy to do that. But in terms of, the general playthrough, I think we're going to end things here, especially considering how long the Bloodborne play got. I've still got my fingers crossed I'll be able to get a copy of Nier Automata, and hopefully that will be the next big thing soon. But let's get today's Critical Thought, and keeping in time or keeping in beat with today or this week's talk on Nintendo, my mouth is getting very dry, so I'm sure I'm going to be slurring my speech more today. I want to talk about Nintendo's transformative period. As we've said in the previous Critical Thoughts, Nintendo as the company that we know today is not the same Nintendo as the late 80s and the 90s, and again ending in 2002 when Hiroshi Yamauchi stepped down as chairman and Satoru Iwata took the place of him. And that's a very big deal because under Iwata's leadership up until his tragic passing last year, Nintendo made some very interesting strides in terms of their corporate philosophy and how they handled things as a console developer. And it's important to talk about the state of the game industry when Iwata took over in 2002. And I think this could definitely be its own critical thought in and of itself, but let's do a quick summary. The game industry in 2002 was in its very much this transitionary period compared to the older days. During the late 80s through the 90s, Japan was considered the mecca of the game industry. You were either going to get the best games from Japan, or you were going to find lesser titles elsewhere. The Western and European markets haven't fully been established during the 90s, they were just starting to get going. There are still some notable examples, studios like Westwood for PC games, Blizzard, Firaxis, and even stuff like Shiny, BioWare, and Interplay. But for the most part, Japan was still considered the king of the market. In 2002, this was when we began to see these major shifts. The PC industry was booming, and this was still a few years before anyone would have heard of this thing called Steam and digital distribution. Microsoft got into this industry with the Xbox, and the Western and European markets really began to establish themselves. Companies like Ubisoft, EA, Firaxis, and even stuff like Activision, Take-Two before they went under, 2K, and so on. The point, though, was it was no longer just about getting your games from Japan, and the market really diversified at this point. When Iwata took over in 2002, the GameCube came out 1 year prior, I believe, and this would have been the last time, really, that Nintendo would have, I guess we can say, a quote-unquote mainstream console. Before then, and through the 80s and 90s, Nintendo was considered the, front line in terms of game technology. Up until, of course, the big shift to CD-based formats in the mid-90s, which we talked about in the earlier Critical Thought. But the GameCube was really a pretty powerful system at the time. And with Iwata, as he took over, he made some very interesting changes to Nintendo. The first one is transparency, and this is a very interesting point. As we've seen over the last few years, especially the independent market, the transparency between developer and consumer has been a major plus in that market. It's not just you seeing a corporate logo or a group of people making your game. Typically, because of the smaller studios and how transparent they are, you get to know these developers. For instance, like I've spoke with like Tyler Sigmund and Chris Barassa of Red Hook Games, Tim Keenan of Misfits Addicts, and so on and so forth. And when it comes to these smaller games, we tend to start to associate the developer and know them. For instance, if I were to ask you who made Her Story, or Gone Home, or Analog, A Hate Story, and even something like Five Nights at Freddy's, chances are you will know those developer leads. If I asked you the lead designer behind Darkstalkers, or Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, chances are most of you will have a hard time with doing that. But what made Nintendo very unique, especially in the early thousands, and again this period of change under Iwata, was becoming more transparent with their audience and with the consumers. This, of course, came with the Nintendo Directs they did, and that, my friends, is definitely an Iwata touch there. I can't imagine someone like Hiroshi Yamauchi going in front of a camera and, joking and making fun and talking to people about what's going on with Nintendo. It just didn't seem like his style. But Iwata was more than happy to do that. And Nintendo began to put their developers more in front. This is where we heard about guys like Masahiro Sakurai, who did the Smash Brothers series, the developer behind Earthbound, whose name escapes me right now, and of course Shigeru Miyamoto, and the developer of the recent Legend of Zelda games. Again, my memory escapes me, and I'm pretty sure I will butcher those names. Another very interesting point of the Nintendo change in the thousands was, of course, the hiring of Reggie Fils-Aimé, and I apologize if you're watching this, Reggie, and I just butchered your last name. Reggie was hired in 2004, I believe, to be the communication or community and marketing director for Nintendo, and his presence was immediately known. There's, of course, the infamous introduction in 2004 when he said he was here to make video games and kick butt. And he just became a very big presence at Nintendo. So big that in a few years from then, he became, of course, head of Nintendo of America. And Reggie, Shigeru, and Iwata really became the public faces of Nintendo. And again, that's something we really don't normally see out of major companies. Of course, Sony tried to do this with Ken Kutaragi, and that marketing stunt they did with the hiring the actor to be like the head of Sony and stuff like that. But in terms of having, again, like the public faces of Nintendo come out and talk and be very personable like that is very unusual. And Nintendo got even more unusual as the years went on with their, little skits they put on, their little shows that they did for major announcements, such as what they did with the Nintendo Switch conference a few months ago. But over the course of this period, Nintendo began to shift their marketing strategy. And again, I think a lot of this was due to Iwata's leadership. With the rise of Sony and Microsoft kind of competing with each other neck and neck in terms of hardware, Nintendo decided to go in a different direction, for better and for worse. As we saw in, I believe it was 2007, which, wow, my memory is really failing me if I just messed that one up, was the release of the Nintendo Wii. And the Wii, it's still a very strange system when you think about it. Again, motion controls. That's the Wii U. Whew. I'm sorry. 2006. I was off by 1 year. But when the Wii came out, this was just this very strange system. Motion controls, this two-handed controller. I really should have brought my Wiimote and nunchuck in. Maybe I'll have like a little after creds video showing that off in this video. But this was Nintendo's kind of shift away. And we're about 10 minutes in, and talking more about that shift forward, that's probably a good 15-20 minutes from right now. But To go over quickly, Nintendo began to focus more on a mainstream audience. Again, the family or casual market with the Nintendo Wii. There are, of course, those famous news pieces of grandparents playing Wii bowling and Wii tennis, stuff like that. Nintendo's handheld market, of course, certainly exploded during this era with the DS and 3DS. Two of my favorite platforms, I think. I really do love my 3DS at this point with all the games I've played on it. But this was a time when Nintendo wanted to, again, make it so that they weren't competing directly with Microsoft and Sony. Again, when you look at the hardware specs or what they offer, Microsoft and Sony are very similar in that regard. And as we've talked about with earlier critical thoughts, and I know I've mentioned this before, Nintendo has been trying to position themselves as the clear number 2 choice. You're going to buy a Microsoft system or a Sony system just to get the full catalog. But then, if you want something unique and original, here's Nintendo. And that has been their strategy going forward. Now, like I said, it went for good and for ill. And the ill certainly came with the Wii U. And if we start talking about that, again, that's another 20-30 minute talk. The Wii U, quite frankly, had some good ideas. I really do love the tablet style of it. But it just was marketed horribly. You don't name a brand new system after your previous system unless you make it easy to recognize. PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, stuff like that. But the Wii to the Wii U, a lot of people just thought it was simply just an upgrade. Just like the 3DS to the 3DS XL. And then the 3DS Lite, I think, came after that. Or the new 3DS, I'm sorry. There's a lot of 3DSs on the market. At least with the Nintendo Switch, you're not going to mistake that for something else. But Nintendo's evolution from 2002 and on certainly made them stand out, and they've become, in a sense, the black sheep of the console market. Again, because they are such the outlier. You never know what's going to come from Nintendo. The Switch being the very brilliant case of that. And unfortunately, unless Reggie is watching this right now and he's going to send me a Switch by tomorrow, I don't think I'm going to have my hands on it. But I'm curious to hear what people will think of it. Now, I'm going to cut this video right now. I will be right back because I do want to grab my Wii accessory. So, I'll see you all in a second. Alright, and we are back. I have my Wii controls right here. And again, this is just unusual. I'm sorry to say that, but it's very weird to have a control system like this. And if we had the time today, we could probably spend a good 5-10 minutes talking about how this was really different. And again, this is one of the things that began to really set Nintendo off, or set them apart from the other developers on the scene. It wasn't just about the hardware power, but it was about doing something different with it. And like I said, games for the Wii and the Wii U, you weren't going to find them on the Xbox One or PlayStation 3 or 4, stuff like that. And that's kind of what Nintendo was banking on. But the problem, and I hate to go into negatives because we've been doing so many negatives over this week, is that this goes back to Nintendo's struggle with courting third-party developers and publishers. In an earlier critical thought, I talked about the challenges of good control design. And the more unique or different your control scheme is, the harder it is to adapt that to a mainstream audience. Again, the PlayStation 3 controller or the analog stick and of course our gamepad here, these are all standardized. They have a basic look to them, they handle the same way, and that means it's easier to make games for both systems. But you can't take a game that was compatible with the gamepad and fit into something like this. If I can turn it all right, here we go. I mean, how would you play something like Call of Duty or Uncharted or something like that, or any of those other games with this kind of control style? And what that meant was the only games that worked best for the Wii, and we could arguably say for the Wii U, were exclusive to Nintendo. And that meant having exclusive third-party games. And it was very hard to get those big hits. Obviously, people were going to buy the next Pikmin, Smash Bros. Zelda, But when we started talking about games like Mad World or wow, my memory is completely failing me. Zombie U. Like, these games, while they were different and unique, just did not light up the sales charts compared to stuff like Uncharted, Tomb Raider, Call of Duty, and so on. I should keep these around. I could direct while I'm doing these critical thoughts. But let's wrap things up for today. Like I said, under Iwata's leadership from 2002 until 2016, Nintendo certainly made great strides forward to distance themselves and be different from the other developers on the scene. For those of you watching this, what did you think, especially for those of you who grew up during the GameCube and forward era? What did you think of Nintendo's marketing strategies and how they handled themselves differently from Sony and Microsoft? For any developers watching this, and this is one thing I'm kind of very curious about, if you worked with Nintendo before Iwata took over and then after, how did things, like, were there any differences in terms of how you dealt with Nintendo? And again, there may be some NDAs involved with that, but if you can leave like a general comment, I am very curious to hear about that. Like I said in the last few critical thoughts, if you want to know more about Nintendo's history up until like 1999, be sure to check out Game Over. Again, this is my old copy from 1999. I don't know if there is an updated one, but definitely a great book on the history of the company. So with that said, we're going to wrap up today's critical thought. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed things, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have a suggestion for a critical thought, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And like I said regarding Neo, if you would like to see more or specific plays of it here on the channel, let me know in any of the comments or on any of the videos. If not, I will go back to it when the DLC comes out. But otherwise, have a great rest of the night. I will see some of you tonight for Game Wisdom Live, and you'll see that all tomorrow. But until then, have a great night and take care. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBicer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBicer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.